Ava Turner stared at the letter in her trembling hands, the words written in her husband Nathan's distinct handwriting burning into her brain. Ava, I'm sorry. This isn't the life I want anymore. I found someone else. Please don't contact me. It's better this way. The words hit her like a tidal wave, leaving her gasping for air. Less than 12 hours ago, Nathan had kissed her goodbye, his smile warm and reassuring as he claimed he was off to a late meeting. Now, he was gone. The house they had built together felt hollow, the echoes of laughter and shared dreams replaced by an unbearable silence. Ava's hand clenched the letter, her chest tightening with a mix of rage and despair. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and she lunged for it, desperate for answers. The screen showed no messages, no missed calls, just the empty void of his absence. "Nathan!" she screamed, her voice ricocheting off the walls. Tears blurred her vision, but anger quickly overtook her. Ava stormed into Nathan's office, her heart pounding. She wasn't going to let him slip away without answers. The desk was a mess, cluttered with receipts, folders, and bills. But one thing stood out, a small envelope with an unfamiliar name scrawled on it, Lauren. Ava's fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a photograph of Nathan, standing with another woman. She was beautiful, younger, with cascading auburn hair and a radiant smile. They stood arm in arm at the beach, her beach, the one where Nathan had proposed to Ava. The date scribbled on the back was recent, just 2 days ago. Her blood ran cold. Ava flipped through the rest of the envelope's contents, finding notes and receipts from restaurants and trips she'd never heard of. Every piece of evidence screamed of betrayal. The next morning, Ava couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. All she could think about was Nathan's betrayal. She wasn't just mourning the loss of her husband. She was grappling with the loss of trust, the foundation of the life they had built. But as the initial shock wore off, a fiery determination rose within her. She wasn't going to let Nathan walk away without consequences. Later that day, Ava logged into the joint email account Nathan had forgotten to lock. The messages she found made her blood boil. Lauren had sent him photos, notes, and messages that confirmed the affair wasn't new. It had been going on for months, hidden in plain sight, beneath business trips and late-night meetings. One message from Lauren read, "I hate sneaking around. Let's just tell her." Nathan's reply had been, "Soon. Let me handle it." The sheer audacity of their plan made Ava's stomach churn. They had intended to confront her, on their terms, as if she were just an obstacle in their story. But Ava wasn't going to let them dictate the narrative. As the days passed, Ava quietly investigated. Through mutual friends and social media, she discovered Lauren's glossy facade was riddled with cracks. She wasn't the successful entrepreneur she claimed to be. In fact, Lauren was deeply in debt, her name tied to unpaid loans and failed business ventures. Ava dug deeper, uncovering shady connections in Lauren's financial history, connections that could expose her as a fraud. Meanwhile, Ava prepared herself for the moment she'd confront them both. That opportunity arrived sooner than she expected. 3 weeks after Nathan's departure, Ava received an unexpected invitation to a fundraiser at an upscale gallery. It was hosted by one of Nathan's clients, someone unaware of the turmoil in their marriage. She almost declined, but a quick search online revealed Nathan and Lauren were expected to attend. Ava RSVP'd with 2 words, "Looking forward." The night of the event, Ava dressed in a sleek black gown that accentuated her figure and confidence. She entered the gallery with her head held high, a glass of champagne in hand. Then she saw them. Nathan and Lauren stood near a sculpture, their laughter filling the room. Lauren was radiant in a shimmering dress, her hand resting possessively on Nathan's arm. Ava approached with calculated poise. "Nathan," she said smoothly, her voice carrying just enough weight to catch his attention. Nathan's head snapped toward her, his expression a mix of shock and guilt. "Ava, I didn't expect to see you here." She smiled coldly. "Of course you didn't." Lauren turned to her, the color draining from her face. "Ava, I don't," Ava interrupted, her tone sharp. "We'll catch up later." Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving them stunned. But she wasn't finished. That night, Ava put the next phase of her plan into action. She anonymously sent Lauren's financial records to her creditors, ensuring the information would make its way to the right people. She also leaked their damning text messages to Nathan's professional circle, tarnishing both their reputations. Within days, whispers of scandal began to circulate. Lauren's creditors closed in, while Nathan faced awkward questions about his personal life spilling into business. A week later, Ava received a message from Nathan. "We need to talk." She considered ignoring it, but curiosity won out. She agreed to meet him at their favorite cafe, the irony of the location not lost on her. Nathan looked worn, his confident demeanor replaced by something quieter, more uncertain. "Ava," he began, his voice softer than she remembered. "I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you're right," Ava said, cutting him off. "You don't." He flinched but pressed on. "Lauren, she's not who I thought she was. She lied to me about everything." Ava raised an eyebrow. "And now you're here, asking me to what? Fix this for you?" Nathan's gaze dropped to the table. "No, I made a mistake, and I wanted you to know how sorry I am." For a moment, Ava felt the weight of their shared history pressing on her. But then she remembered the pain, the humiliation, and the resolve she had built in its wake. "I'm not your safety net, Nathan," she said firmly. "You made your choice. Now live with it." She stood and walked away, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. But Ava wasn't just moving on. She was reclaiming her life, piece by piece. Nathan watched Ava walk away from the cafe, her head held high, her every step brimming with the confidence he'd never seen before. For the first time, he realized just how much damage he had done, not only to her but to himself. The weight of Ava's words bore down on him. He had made his choice, and now he was living the consequences. But as he sat in the empty cafe, guilt wasn't the only emotion twisting his gut. There was something else, a growing fear. Lauren's unraveling had begun. Ava, meanwhile, felt a flicker of triumph as she left the cafe. Her confrontation with Nathan hadn't been about closure. It had been about control. For months, he and Lauren had orchestrated her downfall, weaving a web of deceit behind her back. But now, the tide was turning. That evening, Ava reviewed the results of her quiet war. Lauren's creditors were closing in. Collection agencies were freezing her accounts, and rumors about her financial instability were beginning to spread among her professional connections. Ava leaned back in her chair, a cold satisfaction settling in her chest. But she wasn't done yet. The fallout began almost immediately. Nathan's phone buzzed constantly over the next several days. First, it was Lauren. "You promised me things would get better," she hissed during one frantic call. "Now everything's falling apart. My investors are pulling out. My accounts are frozen, and it's all because of your mess." "My mess?" Nathan shot back. "This isn't just about me, Lauren. You lied to me too. You think that matters now?" Lauren snapped. "I'm drowning here, Nathan, and you're supposed to help me, not drag me down with you." But Nathan didn't have the answer she wanted. He was too busy dealing with the fallout on his end. At work, whispers about his affair spread like wildfire. Colleagues who had once respected him now gave him wary looks, their disapproval palpable. Nathan's boss called him in for a tense meeting. "I don't care about your personal life, Nathan," his boss said coldly. "But when it starts affecting your reputation, and by extension, this company, that's a problem. Fix it. Now." Nathan left the office feeling like the walls were closing in. For Ava, the unraveling was deeply satisfying, but it wasn't without its complications. Lauren wasn't going down quietly. One evening, Ava received a call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Ava Turner," Lauren's voice sneered on the other end. "I should have known you were behind this." Ava smirked, though her grip on the phone tightened. "Lauren, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "Cut the act," Lauren snapped. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Playing the victim while you tear my life apart? I think you did a fine job of that yourself," Ava said, her tone icy. Lauren's voice dropped, venom dripping from every word. You don't know who you're dealing with. I've worked too hard to lose everything because of you. Watch your back. Ava hung up, her heart pounding. She wouldn't let Lauren's threats intimidate her, but they served as a reminder that the game she was playing wasn't without risks. The next escalation came unexpectedly. Ava returned home one evening to find a sleek black car idling near her driveway. As she approached, the window rolled down, revealing a man in a tailored suit. "Miss Turner," he said, his tone professional but firm. "I represent Lauren Hayes." Ava's jaw clenched. "And?" "She's made certain claims," the man continued, "and she's considering legal action. I'd advise you to be careful about any further actions that might be construed as harassment." "Harassment?" Ava repeated, her voice sharp. "She destroyed my marriage, and now she wants to play the victim?" The man's expression didn't change. "I'm simply delivering a message. Good evening, Miss Turner." The car pulled away, leaving Ava fuming. Lauren was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. Nathan wasn't faring much better. He arrived home one evening to find Lauren waiting for him, her hair disheveled and her eyes wild. "You need to fix this," she demanded, storming into his apartment. Nathan rubbed his temples, exhaustion etched into his features. "Lauren, I can't just make your problems disappear." "You could if you tried," she snapped. "You're the one who dragged me into this mess." Nathan's temper flared. "I dragged you? You were the one who pushed me to leave Ava. You said we'd be better off together, but now you're realizing you made a mistake," Lauren interrupted, her voice dripping with disdain. "Let me guess, you miss your wife." Nathan froze, the accusation hitting closer to the truth than he cared to admit. Lauren laughed bitterly. "That's it, isn't it? You think you can crawl back to Ava and make it all better? Newsflash, Nathan, she's done with you. And once I'm done with her, she'll regret ever crossing me." Nathan felt a pang of guilt as Lauren stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Ava, meanwhile, decided to take the offensive. She contacted an old friend who worked in private investigations, someone discreet and reliable. "I need everything you can find on Lauren Hayes," she said, sliding a folder of preliminary information across the table. Her friend raised an eyebrow. "You're not messing around, are you?" "Not even a little," Ava replied. The next few days brought a wealth of new information. Lauren's financial troubles ran deeper than Ava had anticipated, and her connections to questionable figures painted a picture of someone who thrived on manipulation and deceit. But one piece of evidence stood out. Lauren had falsified documents to secure a major investment. If the truth came to light, it wouldn't just ruin her career. It could land her in prison. Ava knew she had found her trump card. The following week, Lauren's world began to collapse. Anonymous tips to her investors exposed her fraudulent activities, prompting a series of lawsuits that left her reeling. Nathan, caught in the crossfire, found himself alienated from both sides. Lauren no longer trusted him, and Ava had made it clear she wanted nothing to do with him. For the first time, he was truly alone. Ava watched from a distance as the chaos unfolded, a mix of satisfaction and unease settling over her. She had fought back and won, but the battle had taken a toll. As she stood on her porch one evening, watching the sunset, her phone buzzed with a message from her investigator friend. "There's something you need to see. Call me." Ava's heart sank. She thought the storm was over, but it was only just beginning. Ava stared at her phone, the cryptic message from her investigator friend leaving a gnawing unease in her chest. "There's something you need to see. Call me." Without hesitation, she dialed the number, pacing her living room as she waited for him to pick up. "Hey," her friend Mark answered, his voice tense. "I dug deeper into Lauren Hayes, and I found something you're not going to like." "What is it?" Ava asked, her stomach tightening. Lauren's not just a con artist with a few failed businesses. She's been running an elaborate scheme for years, targeting men with influence and wealth, bleeding them dry, and leaving them in financial and personal ruin. And Nathan's just her latest mark. Ava froze. "You're telling me she used Nathan?" It's worse than that, Mark said, his voice grim. She's been in contact with some pretty shady people. People who specialize in persuasion tactics. If I had to guess, Nathan was supposed to be a stepping stone, until your interference derailed her plans. Ava's breath hitched. What kind of tactics are we talking about? Blackmail, threats, even falsified evidence. Once Lauren locks onto a target, she doesn't let go easily. And Ava, she's not happy you've been pulling strings behind the scenes. I think you've moved up her hit list. A chill ran down Ava's spine. What do I do? Stay ahead of her, Mark said. I'll send you everything I have. But be careful, Lauren's desperate now. That makes her dangerous. The next morning, Ava received an encrypted file from Mark. As she scrolled through the documents and photos, the depth of Lauren's schemes became clear. Lauren had a pattern. She targeted men with strained marriages or professional vulnerabilities, then exploited their weaknesses to gain control. One name stood out among her previous victims, Jonathan Myers, a successful tech CEO who had vanished from the public eye after a scandal 3 years ago. According to the file, Jonathan had been poised to expose Lauren's tactics when his life abruptly fell apart. An affair gone public, allegations of misconduct, and a financial collapse that left him bankrupt. The parallels to Nathan's situation were chilling. Ava's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She froze, her pulse quickening. Peering through the peephole, she saw a delivery man holding a package. Relieved, she opened the door and accepted the box. But when she returned to the living room and opened it, her relief turned to dread. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. Stay out of this, or you'll regret it. Ava spent the rest of the day on high alert, her mind racing with possibilities. Lauren's reach was greater than she had anticipated, and the threat felt far too real. That evening, she decided to confront the one person who might have answers, Nathan. Nathan's apartment was a far cry from the polished home they had once shared. The place was disheveled, reflecting the chaos in his life. He looked surprised to see her when he opened the door, but his expression quickly turned to guilt. Ava, I wasn't expecting you. I need to talk to you, Ava said, brushing past him into the apartment. It's about Lauren. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. What about her? She's not who you think she is, Ava said, her tone sharp. She's a con artist, Nathan. She's been using you. Nathan's face darkened. You don't know that. I do, Ava snapped. I've seen the evidence. She's done this before, to other men just like you. And now that her plans are falling apart, she's turning her sights on me. Nathan hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. She wouldn't do that. She said she loved me. She's a liar, Nathan. Ava said, her frustration boiling over. She manipulated you, and now she's trying to silence me because I exposed her. Nathan sank into the couch, his head in his hands. I should have seen it. I should have known. You still can, Ava said, her voice softening. Help me stop her, before she destroys both of us. Nathan looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and determination. What do you need me to do? The next day, Ava and Nathan began piecing together everything they knew about Lauren's schemes. With Mark's help, they compiled a detailed dossier of her crimes, including the falsified documents that had secured her investments and the trail of victims she had left behind. But Lauren wasn't going down without a fight. That evening, Ava received an ominous message. A video of herself walking into Nathan's apartment, followed by a text. You're making this worse for yourself. Walk away. Ava's hands shook as she showed the message to Nathan. She's watching me, Ava said, her voice trembling. Nathan's jaw clenched. We need to end this. Now. Their chance came 2 days later, when Lauren hosted a private event at an upscale hotel. It was a bold move, considering her crumbling reputation, but Ava suspected it was her way of projecting strength. With Mark's connections, Ava and Nathan secured access to the event. Armed with the evidence they had gathered, they planned to confront Lauren in front of her investors and expose her lies once and for all. The tension in the hotel ballroom was palpable as Ava entered, her heart pounding. Nathan stayed close by, his presence both reassuring and a reminder of how much was at stake. Lauren stood at the center of the room, her charm in full force as she worked the crowd. But when her eyes landed on Ava, her smile faltered. "Well, this is a surprise," Lauren said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I didn't realize you were on the guest list." Ava smiled coldly. "I thought I'd drop by. After all, it's not every day you get to see a master manipulator at work." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the confrontation. Lauren's expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Ava said, pulling out a folder and holding it up. "Because this says otherwise. Fraud, blackmail, falsified documents, it's all here. And I think your investors would be very interested to know the truth." Lauren's face paled, but she quickly recovered, her voice sharp. "This is ridiculous. She's lying." "Am I?" Ava said, handing the folder to one of the investors. "See for yourself." As the investor flipped through the documents, murmurs spread through the crowd. Lauren's charm began to crack, her desperation showing. "This isn't over," she hissed at Ava, her voice low and venomous. Ava met her gaze, unflinching. "Yes, it is." But as Lauren stormed out of the ballroom, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from won. Ava should have felt victorious as she watched Lauren storm out of the hotel ballroom, her carefully constructed facade cracking under the weight of the evidence. But something gnawed at her, an unshakable feeling that this confrontation was just the beginning of Lauren's retaliation. Nathan approached her, his face pale but determined. "That went better than I expected," he said, his voice low. Ava's eyes stayed on the doorway Lauren had disappeared through. "Did it?" "She's not the type to back down, Nathan. You know that." Nathan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're right. She'll hit back, and hard." Ava nodded, the adrenaline of the evening fading into a cold dread. "We need to be ready." The next morning, Ava woke to a barrage of calls and messages. Mark's number flashed repeatedly on her screen, and her stomach dropped as she answered. "Mark." "Ava," he said, his voice tense. "Turn on the news." Ava scrambled for the remote, switching to the local channel. Her heart sank as a familiar face filled the screen. Nathan. The anchor's voice was grave. "Breaking news this morning. Allegations of financial misconduct have surfaced against businessman Nathan Turner. Sources claim Turner falsified key documents in a recent deal, raising questions about his integrity and business practices." Ava's chest tightened. "What is this?" Mark's voice was grim. "It's Lauren. She leaked doctor documents to the media, pinning her crimes on Nathan." Ava felt the room spin. "She's trying to frame him." "Not just him," Mark said. "You're implicated too. The narrative she's spinning makes it look like you helped him cover it up." Ava barely had time to process the news before her phone buzzed with another call, this time from Nathan. "Did you see it?" he asked, his voice shaking. "I did," Ava said. "We need to get ahead of this." "Lauren's not playing around anymore," Nathan said. "She's going to destroy us." "Not if we destroy her first," Ava replied, her determination hardening. Over the next few days, Ava and Nathan worked tirelessly with Mark to unravel Lauren's scheme. Mark's team tracked down the source of the leaked documents, tracing them back to a private firm Lauren had used to forge the evidence. But as they dug deeper, they uncovered something even more alarming. Lauren had partnered with Dominic Crow, a name that sent chills down Ava's spine. Crow's reputation was infamous. Known for his ruthless tactics and underworld connections, he specialized in neutralizing threats for high-profile clients. "She's escalating," Mark said during a late-night call. "Bringing Crow into this means she's not just playing defense anymore. She's preparing to go on the offensive." "What does that mean for us?" Nathan asked. "It means she's done with subtlety," Mark replied. "If Crow gets involved, it won't stop at legal smears or media attacks. It could get dangerous." Ava leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She had underestimated Lauren's reach and her willingness to destroy anyone in her way. The tension reached a breaking point 2 nights later. Ava was alone in her house, reviewing Mark's latest findings, when she heard the faint sound of glass shattering. Her heart leapt into her throat as she grabbed the gun Lydia had given her weeks ago. She moved cautiously toward the sound, her grip on the weapon tightening. In the dim light of the living room, she saw a figure moving near the broken window. "Don't move," she shouted, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. The figure froze, raising their hands slowly. "Ava, it's me." Her eyes widened as Nathan stepped into the light, his face pale and his hands shaking. "Nathan? What the hell are you doing?" "I had to come," he said, his voice urgent. "Someone's following me. I think it's Crow." Ava's blood ran cold. "You let him here?" "I didn't mean to," Nathan said, panic flashing in his eyes. "But I couldn't stay out there. I didn't know where else to go." Ava clenched her jaw, her mind racing. "We can't stay here. If Crow's involved, this place isn't safe anymore." Minutes later, they were in Ava's car, driving toward a safe house Mark had arranged. The streets were dark and quiet, but every shadow felt like a threat. "I can't believe this is happening," Nathan muttered, his head in his hands. "Believe it," Ava said, her tone sharp. "Lauren's making her move, and she won't stop until we're out of the picture." Nathan looked at her, guilt etched into his features. "I never meant for this to happen." "I didn't think, you didn't think," Ava interrupted. "And now we're both paying the price." The safe house was a small, nondescript cabin on the outskirts of the city. Mark was waiting for them, his expression tense as they arrived. "Did anyone follow you?" he asked. "I don't think so," Ava said, though her voice wavered. Mark nodded, his gaze shifting to Nathan. "You need to tell me everything you know about Lauren's current plans. If we're going to stop her, we need every piece of information we can get." Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "All right, I'll tell you everything." Over the next several hours, Nathan revealed details about his relationship with Lauren, how she had charmed him, manipulated him, and gradually pulled him into her schemes. "She knew exactly what to say, what to do," Nathan admitted. "By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late." Mark took notes, his face grim. "It's worse than I thought. Lauren's not just after money or revenge. She's consolidating power. And Crow's involvement means she's planning to take drastic measures." "What kind of measures?" Ava asked, her stomach tightening. Mark's gaze was steady. "Whatever it takes to silence both of you, for good." The weight of his words hung heavily in the room. Ava exchanged a glance with Nathan, the gravity of their situation sinking in. They weren't just fighting to clear their names anymore. They were fighting to survive. The safe house was silent except for the faint hum of the heater as Ava sat by the window, staring into the darkness beyond the trees. The gravity of Mark's warning lingered in her mind. "Lauren and Crow won't stop until you're out of the picture, for good." She glanced at Nathan, who sat at the dining table, his head in his hands. His guilt was palpable, but it wasn't enough to erase the damage he had caused. "We can't stay here forever," Ava said, breaking the silence. Nathan looked up, his expression hollow. "Then what do we do? We're not exactly equipped to fight someone like Crow." "We don't fight him," Ava replied, her tone firm. "We outmaneuver him. And Lauren." Mark stepped into the room, a laptop tucked under his arm. "She's right. The best defense is offense. If we're going to stop Lauren, we need to expose her in a way she can't recover from, publicly and decisively." "What do you have in mind?" Ava asked. Mark placed the laptop on the table and opened a series of files. "Lauren's been careful to cover her tracks, but her connection to Crow is the weak link. If we can tie her to him and his criminal activities, we'll have everything we need to destroy her reputation and credibility in one blow." Nathan frowned. "And how do we do that?" Mark's expression was grim. "Crow isn't just working for Lauren. He's got his own agenda. I've been tracking his movements, and he's meeting with one of his associates tomorrow night at a private club downtown. If we can intercept that meeting, we might be able to gather evidence linking him directly to Lauren." Ava crossed her arms. "That sounds dangerous." "It is," Mark admitted, "but it's our best shot." The next evening, Ava found herself in the heart of the city, her nerves on edge as she adjusted the earpiece Mark had given her. "I still think this is a bad idea," Nathan muttered as he parked the car a few blocks from the club. "It's the only idea we have," Ava said, her voice steady despite the anxiety bubbling in her chest. "Stay here and keep the engine running. If anything goes wrong, I need you ready to move." Nathan nodded reluctantly. "Be careful." Ava slipped out of the car and blended into the bustling crowd on the street. The club was an upscale establishment with tinted windows and a bouncer guarding the entrance. Mark's voice crackled in her ear. "You're looking for the back entrance. Crow and his associate are meeting in a private room on the second floor. I'll guide you through the security feeds." Ava followed his instructions, finding the service entrance and slipping inside undetected. The narrow hallway smelled of cleaning supplies and faint traces of spilled alcohol, and her heart raced as she made her way upstairs. "Second door on the left," Mark said. Ava paused outside the door, her hand trembling as she placed the small recording device Mark had given her against the crack. She pressed the button, activating the live feed. Inside, she could hear muffled voices. "You'll get your payment when the job's done," Crow said, his voice cold and deliberate. "And the Turner situation?" the other man asked. "Handled," Crow replied. "Lauren's taking care of the loose ends. Once she finishes, there won't be anything left to trace back to us." Ava's stomach dropped. "Do you trust her?" the man asked. Crow let out a dark laugh. "Not in the slightest. But as long as she thinks she's calling the shots, she's useful. Once she's outlived her usefulness, she'll be dealt with too." Ava's breath hitched. Lauren wasn't just a threat. They were planning to betray her as well. Mark's voice came through the earpiece. "Did you get that?" "Every word," Ava whispered, her voice shaky. "Good. Now get out of there before they catch you." As Ava made her way back to the car, her mind raced. The recording was explosive enough to implicate both Crow and Lauren, but it also confirmed the danger they were in. When she slipped into the passenger seat, Nathan looked at her anxiously. "Well, we got what we needed," Ava said, holding up the recorder. "But it's worse than I thought. Crow's planning to turn on Lauren as soon as she's no longer useful." Nathan frowned. "So what do we do now?" "We go public," Ava replied. "This recording, combined with the evidence we already have, is enough to destroy both of them. We need to release it to the media and the authorities simultaneously. It's the only way to ensure they can't retaliate." The next morning, Ava and Mark worked tirelessly to compile the evidence into a comprehensive file. By noon, they had sent it to multiple news outlets, ensuring the story would break before Crow or Lauren could interfere. Hours later, Ava watched as the story spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed of corruption, fraud, and ties to organized crime. Crow's face was plastered across every major network, and Lauren's name was inextricably linked to the scandal. That evening, Ava sat on her porch, exhaustion and relief washing over her. The fight was over, or so she thought. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "They've gone underground. Be careful." Before she could process his warning, a car pulled up in front of her house. For a moment, her heart seized, but then Nathan stepped out, his face lined with worry. "You're okay," he said, relief evident in his voice. "For now," Ava replied, her tone cautious. "But this isn't over yet." Nathan nodded. "I know, but no matter what happens next, we'll face it together." Ava met his gaze, a mix of determination and exhaustion in her eyes. Together, as the sun set, casting long shadows over the quiet street, Ava knew the battle wasn't truly over. But for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came next.